I'd like to call this regular meeting of the Loveland Board of Education to order at 6:03 p.m. And ask Mr. Giuffre for a roll call.
Mr. Daugherty?
Here.
Reverend Eilert? Here. Dr. Lorenz?
Here,
Dr. Schwetzner?
Here.
Mrs. Washburn?
Here.
all present. I would like to let our guests both in the room and online know that our superintendent, Mr. Broadwater, will be joining us virtually. I would like to welcome all guests here this evening. And I would like to ask you to stand for the entry of the, oh, I'm sorry. Need to adopt the agenda. Skipped right over
We'll
that.
make it work however you want.
Can we have a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
I heard Mr. Doherty
Second.
first, and I know Dr. Swetchnow was seconding. So it's been moved and seconded. You should have a paper agenda in front of you, and the agenda is in docs. Can we vote on that?
Mr. Daugherty?
Yes.
Dr. Schwetzner?
Yes.
Reverend Eilert?
Yes.
Dr. Lorenz?
Yes,
Mrs. Washburn?
Yes.
motion carried. My apologies. Now, welcome to our guests. And please stand for the entry of the colors.
Right face. Turn close colors. Post. Present. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Order.
Whereas chartered by an act of Congress in 1958 for combat wounded veterans, the Military Order of the Purple Heart is composed of military men and women who receive the medal, which is awarded in the name of the President of the United States to members of the armed forces wounded in combat with an enemy force, and posthumously to the next of kin of members of the armed forces killed in combat. And whereas the Military Order of the Purple Heart organization was formed in 1932 for the protection and mutual interest of all who have received the award in combat decoration, is composed exclusively of Purple Heart recipients, and is the only congressionally chartered veterans service organization comprised strictly of combat wounded veterans. And whereas the Order of the Purple Heart for military merit, established by General George Washington during the Revolutionary War at Newburgh, New York, August 7th, 1782, is the oldest military decoration in the world in present use. And whereas in recognition of this date and the estimated 1.8 million veterans since World War I who have been awarded this medal, the president and board members of the Loveland City School District in Loveland, Ohio, desire to be among the many to become a Purple Heart School District and to declare 19 April 2022 as Purple Heart Day, as tribute to the service and sacrifice of our veterans, and especially the valor of the extraordinary men and women who have earned the Purple Heart. Now, therefore, I, Dr. Catherine Lorenz, President of the Board of Education, do hereby declare 19 April 2022 as Purple Heart Day. Furthermore, on behalf of the Loveland City Schools and its students, I proudly accept the official designation of Purple Heart School District and confirm our commitment to honor those who serve and have served so faithfully in defense of our freedom as Americans, and gratefully acknowledge their sacrifice.
On behalf of the 350,000 combat wounded veterans of America and the 8,000 wounded Purple Heart recipients in the state of Ohio, I'd like to award you this plaque It reads, "The Military Order of the Purple Heart Special Recognition Award is bestowed with pride to Loveland City Schools for your dedication and support honoring America's combat wounded veterans becoming the Purple Heart school system. Presented by Patriot members of the Department of Purple Heart, Military Order of Purple Heart, USA." So I don't know if you have anybody taking pictures.
We do.
Okay. Anybody want to pick in this? Yeah. Okay. To the other member. And then
Let me announce that. And I would like to announce that while this Purple Heart designation is for combat wounded veterans, we did recognize and would like to recognize all of the veterans who are in the Loveland school system. We did recognize last Thursday, we had a Purple Ribbon Day, Purple Heart Day, to recognize military. And we do have Mr. Rob White, who's a paraprofessional at Loveland Middle School, here this evening with us. And if there is anyone else who is a veteran, we would like to recognize you as well. We recognize those who are online with us. And we now have the conclusion of the ceremony. Is that correct?
we are midstream. We're going to issue coins now to
Okay.
recognize the events, the board members,
Okay,
and those that are present.
thank you.
Issue coins, when?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I shake your hand.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate this.
You guys,
Does that plastic sleeve come out? Oh, yeah, that.
Singular, recover. Cover flags. Artillery, arm. Left, peace. Forward, arm.
Thank those distinguished veterans for the ceremony that they performed for us. They did offer, if anyone wanted to have pictures taken, they will be happy to do that. And I also neglected to mention that Mr. Giuffre, sitting here at the table, is a veteran, and I imagine that he played a few rounds of those taps
Most
during
definitely.
his service, since he served in a musical corps. So thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So customarily, we have, because we kind of stand out in the crowd sometimes. Most of the council we Purple Heart cities with want to flock to get their photos. Politicians or any elected officials always want a photo op. So if you want any pictures with us, we're more than happy to do that as a group, individually, however you want to do that. But now would be the time to do that. When we can recover and get back to business. So is that okay?
Could I suggest that we do a group picture? Yeah.
You want a group?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
All of us,
Where would you like to be, Andrew?
Should we go up?
maybe everybody that's here.
Honor guard.
Okay with
Yeah.
that? Everybody in the room?
Sure. Whoever wants to be.
Have a flag bearer.
I asked Nicole to join us. She is the
Rob,
representative.
Yes.
join us with this.
Yeah.
Whatever you want to do. You want onesies? How about twosies?
These guys in front of us. But
No, we'll intermix.
yeah, intermix. All right,
So
perfect.
usually it works best if you kind of half slam.
Yeah.
That way I don't stick out because I have dinner. John, can you come in?
This way and this way, or all?
Yeah, half and half. This half looking in, this half looking in.
Got it.
Start.
We can hold this
Side.
side.
Wait, no, I'm usually-
The best purple dot. Jump off your knees.
All right, everybody look here. 1, 2, 3.
Thank you very much.
So anybody want an individual? 4 of us.
I'm not for
That's our superintendent.
Mike, can you hear us?
I don't know if anybody could hear me or see me, but I just want to say thank you. And it's quite an honor to be a Purple Heart Distinguished District. And I appreciate it very, very much. And Mr. Rob White, if you're still there, thank you for your service. And I know we've got other members of our staff, Mr. Jouffre, who are veterans, and we thank them. But I'm sorry I could not be there. I wish I could stand between the purple coats. You guys look good.
Thank you. Oh, we'll get Mike.
Oh.
Yeah,
I don't think we get him yet.
Can you center us on his head? Yes.
His head.
I love it.
Look at him.
It's not my best side.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Thank you.
I'm hoping that a good portion of that ceremony was able to go through to the folks who are looking at us online. So we appreciate your patience as you're seeing what you can see online while we're here in person. Mr. Jouffre, there have been no names turned in for hearing of the public. Is that correct? All right. And I did not have any communication come to the board to ask to be heard during hearing the public. So we'll move on to the first agenda item, which is a motion to approve the March 22nd, 2022 Board of Education minute.
So moved.
Mr. Doherty moved. Is there a second? Mrs. Washburn seconded. Any questions, amendments, discussion? All right, Mr. on those.
Mr. Doherty,
Yes.
Mrs. Washburn,
Yes.
Reverend Eilert,
Yes.
Dr. Lorenz,
Yes.
Dr. Schweitzer.
Yes.
Motion carried. We move on as we normally do to administrator reports. These are posted in board docs. They are for the information of the board to prepare for the meeting. They are available to anyone who looks at the agenda on board docs. I will be pointing out one thing in the board president report from those reports. Well, actually, a couple of things that you will be hearing. Anybody have any questions or comments? Then we'll move to my report. And if you think of anything, you can add it then. I have a very short report this evening. The first thing I would like to do is, although I would like to encourage anyone who is here this week to attend plays. I think Nicole will probably be talking about them, but both middle school and high school events are going on. So I would encourage attendance at those. I would like to announce for the board that graduation this year will be May 22nd at 11 a.m. at Cintas. I would like to hear this evening who will attend from the board, and we will make sure that you get the information that you need from the high school as to whether you need a robe or for attending graduation. So let me know this evening. I will let you know that the application process will begin for student reps for next year. Sorry, Nicole. No, we're very proud you've been here with us this year. We will be talking about next. So that process will start. The high school has the information to get that process started. What I would ask for this evening is who would be interested in being the two board members who would interview candidates for student reps.
I was going to say, I'm always happy to do it, but if others want the opportunity.
I hear Mrs. Washburn. I hear Reverend Eilert.
I'm okay to step back. I think give Jonathan a chance at.
All right.
And Eileen is very good at it.
Okay, is that all right, Kevin?
Oh, absolutely.
All right, then our two
think you're
interviewers
drafted.
will be Mrs. Washburn and Reverend Eilert.
I do plan to be at graduation too. I don't know if you want to know that now.
Okay,
or
super.
Later.
What was the date? April 22nd?
May.
May 22nd.
May 21st, Saturday, May 21st, 11 a.m. at the Cintas Center.
Oh, 21st. You just said 22nd.
21st Saturday. You know that date. All right.
You said 20. Did I say 22nd when I read it?
Well, it is the
I
21st,
apologize.
though.
It is the 21st, Saturday, the 21st. Okay. I just read the March 22nd, 2022 minutes and I had too many two. So it's Saturday, May 21st, 11 a.m., Cintas Center. You need to be there ahead of time to be prepared for the ceremony. I think they ask that we be there a half an hour ahead. I often plan to be there more than a half an hour ahead because there's usually quite a traffic jam on 71 getting off at the exit for the Cintas Center. So, you need to be prepared for that. My final note for my report is to make sure that both board members and those in the audience take note of the information that's included in the teacher learning report, which gives some information about our summer program that will be done with Esser Fund, some of it for the high school, some of it for the lower grades. And there will be notification coming out to families, but just be aware and be looking for that so that if you happen to miss something, make sure you contact us so that you can find out about the summer opportunities for students. And that's all I have for my report. Are there any board members who have anything to add? I know that Mr. Doherty asked me prior to the meeting, would the calendar be ready? It's not quite ready yet. I'm hoping by the next meeting, we'll have a running calendar ready for the board to consider. All right, then we can move on to student representative to the board reports. And it looks like Nicole is doing it on her own tonight.
What about now?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So for LIS and LMS, they've started their state testing and those will finish up with science on April 20th and 21st. And students have already participated in English language arts and math so far. And they're earning Golden Tiger Up tickets for doing their best on everything this week. LMS is partnering with the Cincinnati Reds and their straight A program, and 552 LMS students Reds tickets by meeting their expected growth on their recent winter math test. And LMS is excited to be offering an opportunity for their students to travel to Kings Island on April 29th as part of their Tiger Up program. So LMS students who meet certain performance criteria during the first half of fourth quarter will be traveling with teachers for a day of fun to recognize their hard work and performance. And I must say I'm jealous. So Science Day was a huge success at the middle school, and it was wonderful to hear from presenters and parent volunteers and watch students learn. And LIS also participated in the Hoops for Heart Hotshot Blitz as part of the American Heart Association Kids Heart Challenge. And top finishers competed during 5th and 6th grade assemblies, including staff members and some of our LHS team members. And LIS students raised $1,600 for the American Heart. We'd like to give a huge congratulations to the LMS Revolution Show Choir. They did absolutely fantastic, finishing second in the national competition down in Nashville, Tennessee. Our LMS Vex Robotics teams went to state. So the Technically Tigers took 12th place and the Tech Knights took 32nd out of 54 qualifying teams. So congratulations to them. LMS Power of the Pen advances to state. So a big congratulations to that writing team. Tigers competed at the regional tournament against 25 different schools, and our individual award winners were Zane Shrewsbury in 11th place, Emma Rudisell in 9th place, Josie Schaefer in 5th place, and Tabitha Johnson in 2nd place. And the 7th grade team took 1st place overall, meaning 6 of the writers will compete at the state level in May against students from all over Ohio. So congratulations and good luck. LMS Track and Field is off to a good start. Both the boys and the girls won the 16-team Loveland Invitational and also won the 16-team Centerville Relays, with the girls B team taking 2nd. And they've already seen 2 school records broken and 1 tied. LMS Boys Tennis is 2-1 with wins against Wyoming and Sycamore. And in terms of upcoming events, LMS Drama is presenting Seussical Junior April 21st through 23rd. So that'll be wonderful. Go out and see that. April 23rd at the Nesbitt Park is the Run Like a Tiger 5K. Book Fair is May 2nd through May 6th, which I'm also jealous of. I miss Book Fair. There's an outdoor musical concert on May 7th and the LMS 8th grade Washington, D.C. trip, May 17th, 19th, which is one of the best experiences from middle school. So I'm very excited for those kids. For the high school, we're also inviting you to the Little Shop of Horrors that runs from the 20th to the 23rd. Shows begin at 7 p.m. I've been around while they've been rehearsing. It sounds amazing, so that'll be very good. Team 10464, the Bionic Tigers, will be competing in FTC Worlds in Houston, Texas, April 19th through 23rd. We had a little send-off for them yesterday. Good luck to them, and congratulations for making it to Worlds. Loveland Show Choirs traveled to Nashville, Tennessee to compete in Show Choir Nationals at Grand Ole Opry, and BioQuest was second runner-up. So again, congratulations to our show choirs. Spring sports is going well. Our boys lacrosse team is actually undefeated so far, so that's exciting as well. Our end of course exams have begun, so 10th graders completed their ELA exams, and the rest of EOC testing is coming up in the next weeks, as well as students prepping for AP exams in the first 2 weeks of May. High school teachers and staff will have the opportunity to donate blood on April 20th. And this year, our blood drive honors Hunter McKinsey, a sophomore at Western Brown, who was recently diagnosed with stage 4 lymphoma. Our thoughts are with him and his family. There's a full orchestra concert on April 26th. So members of our high school bands have the opportunity to combine with our string orchestras for a performance. This is the first year we've done this since all the COVID happened, so we're super excited to do that. LHS Green Team is hosting Environmental Week at the high school with Dress-Up Day prizes. Spring signing day for both athletics and fine arts occurred earlier this month, so congratulations. Signed. And the senior strings players traditionally present Ms. Bjerken with a gift at the end of our 8 years together. So this year we've been fundraising for a walkway outside of the strings room at the high school, and we'd like to thank administration for their support. We reached our goal with our fundraising, so we're super excited to put that into motion. Our students are excited for our Celebration of Tiger Excellence ceremony on April 22nd during the school day, recognizing high school students for their academic performance throughout the year. And finally, the Senior Awards Night will be held on May 3rd, where students will be recognized for scholarships, department award, class rank, and more. And we're super excited as well.
Thank you, Nicole. Anybody have any questions or comments for Nicole? I don't think she told us about enough stuff. Sorry. No, a really great recount of all the things that we are happy to hear about.
And my comment is one of my favorite things about this job is hearing about how many schools every day. And as we pull hopefully further and further away from COVID, it's nice to see all of that coming back. So thanks for all of your hard work too, Nicole. I really appreciate it over the past 2 years.
Nicely done.
Mr. Broadwater, any comments before we move on to Mr. Giuffre?
Nicole, this is the part of the meeting when I'm sitting beside you and say, it's okay if you go because you did a great job. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, then we will move to Mr. Giuffre and a presentation concerning the 5-year forecast. At least that's what the notes say.
That's what it says. So what I'm presenting tonight actually is state funding, which has been quite a while in coming because it didn't go well for them. I guess it doesn't reach from here, or I'm just pointing at the wrong point over there. Okay. There, thank you. I'll just say next. And so the funding formula that's been in process for 3 years at least, with Senator Patterson or Representative Patterson and Representative Cupp. Representative Patterson's already left the House, and Representative Cupp has his term limited at the end of this year. And so this is a 6-year endeavor. And I have been asked, how did we fare? How did we turn out in this? And thanks for the dedication of 2 of our Finance Committee board members. I will be briefer than I was last night. Just want to know what time it is. Nobody wants to know how the watch works. So in that, there are a couple moving parts and a couple clarifications that Mike and I would like to make. And that has to do with definitions, because one of the definitions that I think we've been challenged with, obviously so, is how to count kids. Because the purpose for which you count kids is different depending on what you're doing. And so we're going to talk about enrollment versus ADM. And I tried to go through and make sure I removed the word enrollment wherever it was in there when it should have been ADM. Talk about the difference between the state formula being on the calculation of the formula and being on a guarantee. Of course, the obvious question, are we getting more money? And that was the question that actually started a lot of research, but unfortunately, the state did not get the funding formula in place until, I'll say February, but it was really March. And so it is fresh off of the presses. January was the implementation month. It didn't go well. So what's expected in the change? Why isn't it more? 6-year phase in, and then there are expenditures involved because the reduction in expenditure has the same impact on the bottom line as an increase in revenue. And then, of course, the overall question of how are we doing and how were we doing? And so Mike's going to join me in a second here, but I just wanted to make sure that we understand these two things when we finish this presentation. That is the difference between enrollment and average daily membership, which is the count of quantifying partial attendance of students in just like a half-day kindergarten would be 0.5, whereas that student is a full student for enrollment purposes, and the state share impact without the guarantee. So with that, thank you. Oh, thank you. There you go, Mike. Can you see it?
Yep, all set. I'm going to go ahead and jump in. And as the board knows, Rob and I talk quite a bit, probably daily, even on the weekends, going through all of this and making sure that we're trying to provide as much information and transparency as possible. And sometimes I think, having been in education for a while, we take for granted what some of these terms mean. And I think it's important to our public who are looking at our community at the data. So the difference there, enrollment is the actual number of students who are physically in the classroom at Loveland and or Great Oaks. We've got some of our students that do the vocational program there and some other classrooms, but enrollment is actual kids in seats in classrooms. And if you notice, 2021 enrollment was 4,338 students. This year, at the same time, we have 4,330 students. So it's pretty static. And I had Mr. Collier email me today, just double checking those numbers, and those are accurate. So enrollment is the actual number of students we have in classrooms. We don't want to confuse open enrollment, which some districts have open enrollment where students from other districts may come in and enroll. We do not have that. At Loveland City School Districts, we do not have that. Enrollment is simply the number of students that we have in our classrooms. The ADM, the acronym stands for Average Daily Membership of Students. ADM is something that Rob uses. That's what he uses to calculate what we're going to get with state funding. So you can see the definition there, the numbers used to calculate funding and report programming. These are partial to whole numbers and differ from enrollment. And Rob could even tell you that from year to year, sometimes we're not comparing apples to apples because that may change, the formula may change, but enrollment is something that we at the district can calculate because it's the number of students in our classrooms. You'll hear me use the term acronym FTE quite a bit. That means full-time equivalent, and normally what it refers to is part-time and full-time staff. So one FTE could be a custodian, it could be a teacher, it could be an administrator, but a full-time equivalent is a full position. If you hear a 0.5 FTE, that means it's a part-time position that we have an employee in. So the next slide, if we can go to the next slide, is a look at kindergarten and live birth data. This is something that we look at when we want to be strategic and project where our enrollment is going and what we can expect from our kids and from our community. I think you'll notice that with Loveland, it's a type of community. It's a destination district. Our enrollment stays fairly static. You'll see dips and you'll see coming back up when the community starts to age and you start to see neighborhoods turning over to younger kids. but for the most part, it will stay fairly static as you go through that. COVID obviously plays a part for the last couple of years. But the one thing I would point out to the board, if you look underneath 2012, you have 332 births. You have 324 students that enrolled in kindergarten. So you had about 8 more births than you did enrollment in kindergarten. And then they have that ratio is 0.98, pretty close to 1-to-1. If you go down to 2022, just as a comparison, you'll see the number of births is 275. The kindergarten enrollment is 295. So now you're a little bit higher than a 1-to-1 ratio at a 1.07. And that's good news. That means our community is happy with our kindergarten program. I'm going to talk about it a little bit more in my presentation, and everything that the board has done to build that program. Jesse Coles, who's there this evening, has done a great job of making sure that we're being reactive to what our community wants. But taking a look at that, this is another projection. Where are we going with enrollment, and what does that look like? The next slide, I'm going to use that acronym FTE again. And the FTE versus the district enrollment, the orange line is the percent difference in district enrollment. And you can see that it has dipped at a point and it is moving downward. The COVID, we'll see how that plays a portion in it. But if you notice, the blue is the percent difference in our full-time equivalents. In 2016, it took a large dip. And it has been moving based upon the district enrollment. If you notice, we've hit where we really are in pretty good shape in 2020, where we're meeting our students' needs and we have the appropriate FTEs. When Mr. Collier and the rest of our administrative team sits down to look at FTEs in the classroom, we do have a chart. And we have target class sizes. That's number one thing in FTEs is class size in my book. And our class sizes are appropriate. Therefore, you'll notice this year we had talked about our technology position. We're able to reallocate resources because we've looked at that chart and our class sizes are appropriate for the age levels. The younger the age, the lower the class size. And Garth has worked very, very hard at making sure that we maintain those ratios. And right now for next year, we look very, very good. So Mr. Jouffre, those were the 3 slides I was going to hit in terms of kind of explaining what we look at on my side. And I'll go ahead and turn it back over to you.
Thank you. So the biggest change in the funding formula, especially for this district that we experienced, is if you look at the top here, I'm colorblind. The bar on the left, the gold one, okay. The gold one, oops, where are you going? Bring me back home, Colin. The gold one is what we were funded by up until this year. The green is our number of district educated students count, the ADM. And so at the bottom, this is the grouping of classes. At the bottom, it says kindergarten 1 through 3, 4 through 8, and 9 through 12. So this is what our district ADM looks like going back to 2016, even though we were funded this way all the way up until 2021. And so that change is huge because we were receiving funds for those students, but we were also paying expenses for tuition. That difference is made up by property taxes. Next slide. And so in June, was provided this with someone who attended the estimation of what we would get. And notice that number, which is the difference between current aid, proposed aid, and it says change. It doesn't say increase in funding, it says change. And the reason is because it's the result of two confluent things. One is less funding here in revenue as a result of the decrease of the ADM that we're being funded for. And not at all. One more. There we go. And so these expenditures from FY20 and 21 included these tuition categories. And that's open enrollment out, and it is tuition for grants or scholarships, autism scholarship and Peterson scholarship. And those were very, very expensive for us. And so if we go to the next slide, we can see that the result, we're not paying that anymore. The result is that we have both revenues and expenditures going down, and here's the $770,000. That is an increase to our cash balance as a result of the change in the funding formula. So that is the answer and the result. And we feel pretty confident that that is the way it is being rolled out. Now, this is a biennium budget. This is the first year of the biennium budget. All bets are off after the second year. But in the meantime, we need to take a look, because this says that we are going to continue to receive additional revenue, not a whole lot. Those are the result of the transitioning in, phasing in the model, because it's not fully funded now. And if you want to go to the next one. This is currently a proposed phase in, and the phase in works two ways. If you are receiving anything that's not guaranteed, if you're guaranteed and you receive it now. If you're not guaranteed, you're a formula district, then you're phasing in the increases to your formula. If you are receiving monies for other populations, transportation, those are also being phased in. And I had to put this up here. What assumptions are we making about the phase in? It will change. Next slide. House Bill 66 budget changed 6 times in 18 months. This is a picture or a depiction of what it would look like if we were funded by the formula. This down here, starting at $1,115 and going all the way down to $375. If we were not on a guarantee, that's how much of the $7,200 that we are being calculated to have as a base cost. And this is new. Every district has its own based cost based upon the next slide. Well, actually, the next slide. So this is our number, 7261. It's unique to us. I think that $7,760, I think, is the max core. The average in the state of Ohio is $7,200 is what they're using. So this circle represents that 7261, which is our local share and what our funding be, and it's based upon the green box at the bottom. The top level of the green box is the wealth per student. And you can see the percentage increases underneath there, 7, 6.9. Those are based upon three factors. One is the taxpayer income, property values, and ADM. And so this is showing the result of down here, the result of what we would be funded if we were a formula district goes from being phased in 1,000 down to 375. So we're a guaranteed district. That's the good news. And I think next slide. This is how the phase in of the guarantee. So they're phasing in the guarantee for us. And by the time we get to 2026, which is not the full implementation, we're at $7.6 million of a guarantee. And the end of the biennium is 2023. So in 2024, we need to be hopeful, mindful that that guarantee continues on the original path that it was on, and that there's not a reset or a reduction or any of those kinds of things. That's a long way off, but that's what it currently looks like with regards to the difference between what we would earn on a formula and what we are receiving on a guarantee. Next one. And so how are we doing? Well, this is what I think we looked at this in November. This is what we looked like. This is our revenues in the black bar. I can see black and gray. The revenues in the black bar and the gray bar being expenditures. And the result is the yellow line. And so of course, everybody wants to know, how are we looking now? Next slide. And we go out 1 year, but we go back to 2025 and we're pretty much in sync. And the one constant that we can rely upon is that the percentages that we're receiving right now, if we stay on a guarantee state, will be the same between 21 and 26. So will real estate taxes. And so those are the two main sources of our income. And that is where we are with state funding. So I'll I'll put some more down for next month when we do the forecast, the remainder of the categories. This one had a lot of moving parts, and I just wanted to make sure that I was able to communicate with those folks who are curious about how we landed. And so it's not terrible.
You ready for questions?
I am.
So on this slide that we're looking at right now, the yellow line is
Projected balance.
and the 15.01 cash balance nomenclature down at the bottom.
That's the line on the forecast.
That's just a line number.
On the forecast, yes.
So at what level in here do treasurers start to be concerned, do you think, about the cash balance?
When those two boxes in 2022 are lined up and the expenditures pass the revenues, when that gets my attention.
So that's what we think of as deficit spending.
Right.
And this chart is showing what in 23 we start deficit spending is our projection, right?
Mhm.
Which means that our revenues have stayed relatively flat, but inflation primarily, I think, on our expenditures has
Reared its ugly head.
reared its ugly head.
Yeah.
And inflation, not just the inflation that we normally experience due to things like labor contracts and what have you, but we also have some big macroeconomic issues that we're contending with. That's just kind of the rest of the planet right now.
Right. And could you go back a couple slides, Colin, to the green box? There we go. The other thing is that even though property values are inflating, the revenue that we receive from them does not for our revenue stream. And the other thing that the state assumes that we're gathering that. They're assuming that we're capturing that growth in the formula. And so that top line there, which is the wealth per student, they're showing us growing in our ability to pay locally, which is why they're reducing the amount of our state share as we go forward.
So the reality is that we won't get during the course of a pre-existing levy to share in, I don't like that word share. Our revenue stream from property taxes, as a general rule, does not change year to year to year.
Just for one factor, every 3 years, update or reappraisal, we get 4.56 inside mills. And those are not subject to reduction factors.
Generally speaking.
Generally speaking, it's flat.
While under normal circumstances, we have appreciation in real estate values. Our taxpayers don't see an increase in the taxes that are collected on behalf of the district.
That's correct.
And that's exacerbated here because of kind of widespread inflation, real estate market included, et cetera, because it has an impact on the state funding formula that presumes that school districts are getting the benefit of that real estate growth.
Exactly. Yes.
And in fact, we're not.
Right.
So let me bring you back to this.
Could I ask about the
Yeah, please.
reduction too? It's the reduction due to House Bill 920.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It is. And there are districts in the state, many districts in the state, I want to say it's 2/3. They're at the 20 mil floor. And if you're at the 20 mil floor, that's the minimum amount of millage that it's required to be collected by the Department of Education for funding. And so those districts receive the full impact of any market value or reappraisal update. Some of those in Warren County were as high as 20% last year, and they will receive it every time because they're at the floor.
Can I ask one question as well that has something to do with the whole notion of guarantee? Am I misunderstanding? But prior to this way of figuring out the number for Loveland, when I heard the word guarantee, I was thinking that what was guaranteed was the amount of state funding. So if you got this much last year and you're a guaranteed district, you're going to get that much this year.
Mhm.
Am I understanding correctly now that the way the funding is being calculated, guarantee doesn't mean that? Guarantee means that 7261 is what Loveland should have per student, and the state funding will adjust depending on what the local share pays.
It is more of a guarantee based upon an amount per student. And so it is possible that that number will change.
Okay. All right, thanks.
So if I can bring you back to the next to the last slide, which is the last slide that we had up there. Yep.
How are we doing?
Yeah. How are we doing slide? So the yellow line again is fiscal year end cash balance.
Mhm.
And so let's see here, in 22, essentially in June of this year, we're expecting, I don't know, it looks like maybe $12 million or something in that neighborhood. I'm just interpreting it around. And it starts to drift down, it looks like, because we're in this deficit spending process starting in 23. So that cash balance is working its way lower.
Yes.
So my question a moment ago was, in the treasurer community, what is kind of the rule of thumb about what that cash balance ought to be in order to maintain, a healthy enough cash balance that supports the ebbs and flows during the course of the year?
Mhm.
Because we ended at a higher level than some other parts of the year.
Right.
But in, say, October, November, we haven't had any tax receipts come in for several months. We've continued to pay out all of our various expenses, $4 or $5 million a month, and that starts to get lower and lower and lower until it gets rejuvenated and we get the next round of tax receipts
Right.
at the end of the year, beginning of the following year, right? So I know you worry about how low that cash balance gets during the course of the year. So the ending balance is one way of trying to feel comfortable that you're going to be okay during the year.
Right.
So interpret for us, when do you see this becoming an issue?
Well, I think that the cash balance is the result of operations, and the revenues are what they are. The only means of control that we have over that is local property taxes. The expenditures, can you go, Colin, can you go back up to the slide that Mr. Broadwater presented? When it comes to expenditures, our biggest expense is right there. Oop, that one. So those are declines in teaching staff since 14, and that's a lot of expenditures that have not drawn upon or affected the ending balance. So I would say that if we were robust with our staffing, that there would be options available with regards to reducing expenditures. And so when we look at if you want to go back to the other slide, the black and gray one, when we look at what can impact that bottom line, it really comes down to those two things. That is the effect and the result. So as you see those expenditures grow, and I think that we will certainly be making some adjustments with regards to the cost of gasoline, which affects everything. And we'll be, I think, revisiting our expenditures, Mike and I together, for the spring forecast, which typically you're not doing, but there's been a lot of things that have changed since the fall. And so when we come with the forecast, I think that we'll probably see that the evidence in how it affects the ending balance. But to answer your question, a lot of boards have ending balance policy. They go from 10 to 20%. It depends on the district. I typically have those if I'm issuing debt because it's something analysts like to see. So I think it's something that we need to have a conversation about so that we can get comfortable as a board and administration with regards to what that says based upon our revenues versus expenditures going forward.
What are your expenditure assumptions up here that are represented for annual increase?
They are, but I think it's light. I adopted a forecast coming in the door and I thought that it looked pretty good before world events came along. And I think that the other thing that the job market, I don't know that it was as difficult to find people when I first started. So we've got a kind of a confluence of challenges that are truly going to impact what our expenditures are going to be. We can't hire if we wanted to, and so that's competition, and that competition drives up rates. So
So
there's
you're saying that those assumptions on increases in expenditures may be actually not as great as they should be.
we definitely need to revisit it. I think
So percentage wise, like per annual, what percentage does that represent?
Well, there's several different line items and expenditures, and so for example, salaries. I have different assumptions for the first 2 years. And then after that, I have steps and then different assumptions for COLA. For health insurance, that's one that you typically are assuming something high because it could happen, but it doesn't always happen. It could be 2% one year, 17% the next year. So those are a little stronger in that line item. Purchase services, that what I showed you in tuition, we had a huge reduction as a result of it not flowing through the model, the state funding model. But we're now paying, what, $5 a gallon for diesel? I was looking back in 2019, we we're paying $2.54 and driving around, 100,000 miles. So that's quite a big
I'm
impact.
just wondering, do we know though on average, when we're looking across each year, so from 23 to 26, we're seeing that increase, what that percentage average would be?
That's what I'm saying, is that I think that we need to revisit that.
Historically, 2-3% compounded
It could be 5.
in a given year.
Well, it's like last year, we had Esser funds, so it went down. We went down a couple $1 million. And so that really helped sustain us for at least a year. So taking those moving parts into consideration, you've got some material transactions historically and currently that we're going to need to reevaluate trend going forward, because trend has been affected as a result of those events.
I asked that just thinking strategically. So like you said, 23 becomes that critical year where now our expenses outpace our revenue. So when we start looking, that becomes a compounding issue if we're not addressing the revenue side. So just to have those kind of averages in our head when we're thinking strategically about when is that right moment to say, okay, we want to make the ask now to so that we're knowing how much larger the ask is going to need to be if we're compounding it moving forward.
And I think that that's obviously what you want to see in the forecast. And I will be presenting some of that trend analysis in the presentation in May. I do believe that the visioning process that's going on right now will have a huge determining factor with regards to what other resources we might want to afford for what that process comes to realize and what we're able to afford.
If I could jump in, Rob.
Please do.
Yeah, the concern I would have, and I always have, and you hear me talk about FTEs and making sure we stay flat and we don't see the FTE creep. I think it's important to understand that when expenditures are above revenues, there's zero flexibility in my mind for any adjustment other than reallocating positions. And the example I would say is if you were to add 5 FTEs, and let's say they're experienced individuals and all told benefits salary is $100,000, that's $500,000, which when you have a cash balance, you might say, well, that's okay, but $500,000 over the 5-year projection here is $2.5 million. So you can see how some people say, well, it's 5 FTEs. What's 5 FTEs? It's a lot. It affects this quite a bit. And that's why the strategic visioning, we're obviously not looking to add FTEs, but it's important to know what our goals are, what our vision is, so that we can have a more accurate projection, because it can change quickly when you're looking at a 5-year forecast, because everything starts compounding. And so that's the concern when we sit down and look at staffing, because staffing is the largest portion of this forecast. So that just, in my mind, that's what I think about when we go through that. But thanks, Rob.
I'm going to stay on this for another minute to try to nail it down a little bit. But it's this whole issue of kind of broad-based inflation on top of our contracted cost increases that leads me to be asking, this line of questioning
Sure.
about our cash balance. 6 months ago, we didn't have this inflationary situation, and we could foresee a point down the road when the cash balance would start to become problematic.
Mhm.
I'm trying to get a little, maybe more sensitivity exposed on how that situation has maybe become a little bit more of a concern right now. And I suppose what you're saying, if I hear you right, is that you're going to do a new forecast and you're going to revisit the assumptions that go into the forecast in light of today's conditions.
Right.
So you'll have a better handle on what it looks like. I'm gonna bet it's not gonna look better than what we're on the screen. It's
Hopefully
gonna
not
be
much worse, right?
Likely it's gonna be a little worse than this. I'm just looking here somewhere. It looks to me like between 24, 25, somewhere in and around there, we start to get soft during the course of the year, which is really the problem, right?
Right.
Because all of a sudden, tax revenue receipts don't show up in a timely manner,
Mhm.
which happens once in a while.
Once in a while.
And if we have too low of a cash balance, make payroll.
Oh, I'll get a bond anticipation note or tax anticipation note. We'll be fine. And we do have to anticipate that and give you plenty of time to be able to see that coming. But like, for example, we're increasing fuel costs by $60,000 and we haven't had a full year of these prices. So as I take that forward into the next year, that trend and those numbers are a little more challenging to come by, because back in 19, we spent $315,000 on fuel. This year, we budgeted $260,000. And so we got a little bit of creep, and I don't see these prices coming down anytime soon. So those are assumptions that are going to be new and unique.
John Ames is in the room tonight, but you remember the number in our finance committee meeting the other day that he was tracking for every dollar of diesel increase,
$100,000.
$100,000
Yeah.
for every dollar.
Yep.
Well, and this goes back to to pile on to what Kevin's been hammering. Our 5-year projected expenditures are significantly less than what our expenditures will be, at least for the next year, based on inflation alone. And so what we're asking you to do is figure out exactly when inflation is going to end,
Right.
and how far it's going to take us, which obviously is an impossible task, and then induces a lot more uncertainty into our planning, which then the obvious answer to uncertainty in planning is to take a more conservative approach and be very careful about running finances in a negative basis for an extended period of time.
So that's a great way to say it.
And I think that's really what this gets down to at the heart of it.
Yeah.
There's one more thing that I want to make sure that I understand completely. I mean, can we go back to the slide? That's the blue slide, the guarantee or formula, with the blue columns and the rising red line. So the state in their change in the funding formula we'll use the word guaranteed, that they will continue funding us at the same rate, even though they've determined that we don't need that because we're a wealthy enough district that we don't need the extra support. But in the process of passing that bill, they made guarantees that they would continue our support at the same level. Is that a fair restatement?
That was how the model it was explained. But as I said, those two representatives won't be there when the next budget bill is determined.
And I think that this graph shows another glaring uncertainty that we have. We have 2 years of a promised 6-year guarantee funded.
Yes.
We have 4 years of a promised guarantee not funded. And if things go sideways, they decide to go back to the formula that's written in law. we could lose $7.5 million in 2026.
Possibility.
And I don't know how you budget for that.
So can I ask for some clarification, explanation for us and people listening in terms of revenue, how the revenues aren't exactly the same as before due to the restricted and unrestricted changes with the fair school funding plan?
So there was a reallocation of unrestricted monies that went into restricted. Those are for special pops, special pops. And those we have to demonstrate that we're using those. One of those was the Student Success and Wellness Fund, which is for social emotional. That was the governor's brainchild. And it was in the last budget bill in Fund 460. And that was the one thing, I think it might still be in committee, but they rolled that in and it appears to be part of our guaranteed money, not added on to the guaranteed money. And so you took the problem with it is that when the revenue came into the general fund, so did the expenditures. And so that was one part of it that we were hoping somebody, would change their mind about how that, and that was the other thing why it took so long, is because once these folks get together and they make a decision afterwards, there's disagreement about what they decided upon. And then the poor guys at ODE have to figure out how to make that work in a formula, which is why we had a train wreck in January, and February was a little better, but it was still a 5-figure adjustment for us in March. And dust isn't settled yet, but this is certainly unique. We are one of the top 40 districts in the state of Ohio, based upon income and property values per student.
Well, and then this goes back to reflect the fact that I think that we know, and I don't think that it's widely understood, that when your house is reevaluated and your taxes appear to go up, the school isn't getting more money when that happens.
Right.
Until a new levy is passed, at which point that increase can be captured.
And there are other people on the ballot. I think we've got fire and EMT coming up. The inside millage, the 10 inside mills is the only thing that would impact a change, and it would only be during a reappraisal year or update every 3. Otherwise, it would be someone else's levy. So, yeah.
And to go back, our last levy again was
14.
14. So any kind of property value appreciation since that point in time, a small portion of it has been shared with the district to help to cover the increase in costs, but not a large portion.
Not a large.
If you think about that, it's 8 years and counting since the last one. So between a fair amount of Esser money, $5 million or something, whatever the number was, in Esser funds, some of which was spent on new programs as it had to be. But generally good fiscal management. We get 8 years out of this last levy, and I'm not sure what this is going to turn out to be. I think there's an increasingly urgent need to kind of focus in on when are we going to have a problem, because we're going to have a problem at some point down the road. But we might end up going 9 or 10 years. I don't know. I think that's a story, how well this has actually been managed, but we're getting to the end of that line. It looks to me, and you'll tell us more soon, I hope.
We sure will. And I always start out when I'm talking about this stuff by saying, I'm not complaining. I swear I'm not complaining, because it does sound like you are when you start talking about how things are. But at any rate, this was just an attempt to make sure that the folks who were concerned about what we were getting from the state were able to get an answer now that we know.
Well, I think the public, this is to Eric's comment and some others, but the public really needs to understand the risk that's out there with respect to this guarantee that we've been on.
Well, and
We
I
may be fine, but then again, things could change.
also want to certainly applaud the management that would enable us to potentially make it 9 or 10 years, but I also wouldn't want to present that in a way that says there haven't been costs incurred to the product of our educational offerings to our students during that time because of the lack of funding. So, we're certainly not delivering all of the services and opportunities for our students today that we were 5 years ago because we have not passed funding. So it's a both and in that yes, wonderful that we've been able to continue to manage and do this, but we've already taken a step back in terms of some of the things we're offering.
Yeah, I agree with you. Part of the reason I point that out, especially both for us as a board, but also for the public, is that I think when we eventually do get to the point of saying that we need to talk about a levy, people will hear that in part based on whether they feel that we've done our job as a school district in responsibly managing, the financial side of this thing. And in a sense, we've earned the right to go ask for further funding. And it's a complex story, right? To your point, are we delivering the product? Well, not exactly the same product for sure. But from an educational quality perspective, I think we have a heck of a story to tell, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's harder for some people to get to school today than it was a few years ago, and that's on us. It's on the situation. So anyway, I'm sorry. I think we're generally in agreement.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
Thank you, Colin.
Mr. Broadwater, anything to add before we move on to the next item?
No, just good discussion, and thank you, Mr. Dufresne, for enlightening us, but it's good discussion. And Reverend Eilert, I think you make a good point in regards to you always want to balance the expenditures, but also make sure we're offering what we need to offer for our kids, and that's where the tough discussions are. But no, that was good discussion.
Hey, thanks. All right, I believe the next item we move on to is summer school, and I believe that's Mrs. Connor. Am I correct about that?
I wanted to take a few minutes just to kind of give you an update on where we are with our summer school planning. I wanted to let everyone at home know that that is linked into board docs, and we're getting ready to kind of pop this up on the screen here for the purpose of the board if they would like. So I wanted to, so Colin, yeah, we've got, it doesn't like to advance. Sorry about that. Now it wants to. All right. I just want to remind everyone of just a little bit of a consideration. Mr. Doherty referenced this in one of his comments when he was speaking about Esser. So one of the large pieces that came out with Esser last spring, and if you recall, I remember having these conversations with some of you that were at the table, is that there had to be a 20% mandated piece of that funding that is allocated for what they're calling extended learning. Now, extended learning can look like a lot of things, right? So it's anything that happens outside of the traditional school day. So sometimes people might ask, and I've had this question, so out of that 20%, can you just like hire people to come in during the school day to do things? And no, it has to be what's considered outside of the traditional school day. Many school districts, just paid services to kind of take care of things for them over summer learning. And if you recall, part of this was to address what they were terming the COVID gap. When we presented to the Board of Education in the fall on some updates on some of the data that we have seen and some of the plannings that we're doing educationally for our students to try to kind of lessen what they're calling that gap, they shared some of that information and some of the things that we've been doing. Another reminder that I wanted to kind of point out is that there is a requirement that this is spent over a 3-year period. So last summer, we held summer learning. This summer, we're planning for it. And then the next summer of 2023 is the last summer that if we wanted to do this, it would be covered out of Esser funds. All of this piece must be expended by September of 2023. So just to kind of give you an overview, to date, that 20% summer learning expenses for 2021 covered. This school year, we've been covering after school tutoring and enrichment opportunities throughout the entire district. Sometimes it's test prep, sometimes it's like the math groups that we want to be meeting with. Our middle school's doing a really awesome job right now, pulling in a lot of their staff to do some what they're calling basically TLC time. And they're just bringing everyone to the table and just taking care of the whole child. So it's an academic focus as well as opportunities to kind of help some of those students that might be struggling with some things. Also, we are right now in preparations for summer learning, and that's what I'm just going to kind of talk with you about. I just felt like it was important to remember that everything that's coming, this is all part of that 20% that we talked about last spring. Okay, Colin. Okay, so this is what this is going to kind of look like for our high school. Traditionally at our high school, we run a lot of our credit recovery through an online program that's called X. We still have that option there. But what I've talked with the high school admin and counseling department about is looking a little bit at this in-person credit recovery option. So let's say we have a student who may have failed the first semester of English 9. The student passes the second semester of English 9. We would want to encourage that student and those families to enroll in a one semester kind of recoup option where they're physically attending school for a set number of time, and that we have staff there to kind of, in essence, get in-person instruction. What we're finding with our students who are in 9th and 10th grade, that the in-person components of some of these core required courses, and some of these are tested subjects, it's the in-person piece is more beneficial for them as learners versus online. So we're trying to be mindful of that and try to build kind of a program where particularly those courses would be courses that we would be offering as an in-person. So you'll see that's English 9, so that's your 9th and 10th grade students in English courses. And then Algebra 1, those may be some freshmen. And then geometry, which are typically sophomores, so we'll be coming on. We also are offering honors geometry. We've offered honors geometry, I feel like, for 3 years now. That course is an opportunity for students who were math accelerated and may not have been math accelerated and had the opportunity to take I guess they would be taking honors geometry in the fall of the school year. They could take it in the summer and be ready for Algebra 2 as freshmen. It's another way to get them to the higher level mathematics courses earlier. So think of those kids that, sometimes math is kind of a unique subject area. Students in 6th grade, when we start kind of saying, hey, here's our subject accelerated math students, something in mathematics may not have clicked just yet. But as they age, all of a sudden something does. And so we just want to build in that opportunity. We've had a lot of success with that. And so when I talk with our high school mathematics department, that's something they want to keep. LEAP, if you guys remember last year, we ran 2 LEAP sessions through Esser funds for families whose students wanted to take either the June or the July ACT test. And so those are very popular sessions because we cover the cost of those for those 2 summer tests. We've also allowed the LEAP organization to bring their tutors to Loveland High School, and we had a lot of positive response. We session before our juniors took the ACT this year, and that was a very popular option as well. Credit recovery online, we always do the online health PE. A couple of other really cool things we're doing is kind of a field trip tour behind the scenes in sports for 25 students to go to FC Cincinnati and the Centos and talk with sports management professionals about that particular field. We're also purchasing the youth science career licensing for just the summer to do some career exploration type pieces that really hone in on some of the students who are still trying to figure out their pathways. So that's from a high school perspective in June. Colin, would you mind advancing, please? To date, with this plan, we've sent invitations to families of those students who are inviting to take part in our credit recovery courses, both in person and online. Registration has been sent for honors geometry, LEAP, online health, PE, all these other pieces. we are working with logistics with transportation and maintenance, and we are working through the staffing and the curriculum rewriting. So if you don't mind advancing. In July and August, you're going to notice that our K-8 summer school is going to be launching. Notice the dates. Those are 4 days in July, July 18th through the 21st, July 25th through the 28th, and 2 days in August. Our K-4 is looking at 2 half-day sessions, the AM, PM. This is very similar to what we did last year. We are going to run this program concurrently with the Summer Jumpstart program. So that way we share a lot of the same resources. We share the same buses, the same food service. So it's not like we're running the programs at a separate time. It's continual. You will notice that right now, what we're planning with 5 through 8 is a half-day enroll option for AM. Last year, we noticed our numbers were not as large with the 5 through 8. I think that becomes the time when parents are maybe wanting their students to take part in summer learning programs, and the students may always be so excited about it. So what we found was that was the area that we were like, we're going to start with an projection for just the AM, and then if we need to open that up for an afternoon option when things start coming in, we will certainly watch that and do that. To date, invitations have been sent to students. We are looking at logistics with transportation, maintenance, and food service. We are working through staffing and curriculum. And then there will be, once we kind of go through the students who we're inviting, we're going to be opening a registration for any of the families who are interested in those K through 8 summer programs. All right, so if you take a look here, here's July and August. So things don't really stop at the high school. It feels like it continues. So LEAP is still going to be running because of that July ACT test. And then you're also going to see that we will be holding this is the 4th time we've done this. This is very popular, a college application seminar where we bring in a teacher who does summer, basically talks about how to do your college admissions essay. Mr. Mitchell's there to talk about some logistics. And then we also talk about test prep, getting basically all the pieces you need to get to college. This one's usually very popular. So here are some thoughts that I'm just kind of putting out there as we move forward. So just so you know, like we did last fall, we had our summer school coordinators give you an update of how the summer learning program went, and we will probably do the same thing this coming fall. Also, we are going to continue to explore extended learning opportunities throughout next school year, the 22-23 school year. What does that look like? What are some new options? And then obviously, we will be planning the summer 2023 learning plan for what that looks like for next summer as well. I think probably something that is important for us to consider is evaluate what components of these programs do we see the most to prove to be the most beneficial for our student outcomes, and then be thinking about ways about how could these be sustainable once ESSER funds run out. And I think that's probably going to be a big question next year, is really to take a look at, we've been putting, we had, call it a luxury, however you want to look at it, we've had the opportunity to use those funds to be very purposeful about meeting the needs of some of the students who've struggled as a result of the shutdown. And I guess in my mind, I'm still trying to think about what pieces of these would we be looking at? How might those be funded post 2023? And I think that's probably in any program, that's probably what we need to be doing. Okay, and at this time, I'm just going to kind of open it up. I know this is just a brief. I don't want to give, still working through the logistics and the specifics, but I just want to let you know where we are with this point.
And I have a question, and I'm
Yep.
not asking for specifics. on
Right.
anything. I understand completely that 20% of the ESSER funds was to be
Yes.
served for this gap kind of, but we have sufficient ESSER funds available to do, we've done the summer 21, do the summer 22, and there will still be sufficient funds to do what we need to do in summer of 23.
Yes.
And has that been covering everything we've been doing in the summer, or are there, because some of those summer programs were going on before we had the ESSER funds. So are they
Right.
still, all I'm asking is at the end of the ESSER fund, do we need to make sure that in the budget, we bring back what we were doing in summer as well as what we want to continue?
Yes, so that's a very good question. So what Dr. Lorenz is referencing is that many of those high school pieces, we charged. So if a student took a credit recovery course, there was a fee for taking it. And so up until Esser, when we were running summer school last summer was the first time we did not charge for those. So as we were not charging for the other students, we felt that it was appropriate to not charge for the other pieces that we were offering and have been offering. So that is part of the discussion going through next school year is what pieces are we keeping? What are we charging? What's appropriate, right? For what we're delivering. It's a good question. Yeah.
Did you say, did I miss, you were talking particularly the middle school program about making invitations and there being open enrollment? What were the criteria for the invitations?
So those invitations are students that we have through our staff and through our administrators have indicated that they had maybe a specific need, or perhaps there were some things that we could do to help them catch up in a particular subject area. So those went through, like, they're monitoring their growth throughout the school year. This is somebody that could probably benefit from this. And so those are very strategically chosen based upon the needs that they're seeing within those individual students. So what we want to do first is fill those programs with the students who have maybe some of the most significant needs, and before we open it up to the open options. I do know that our our 5 through 8 right now, there's plenty of room, which I would expect. Again, as students get older, it sometimes becomes more challenging, I think, for parents they almost have to sometimes make them do things. And that's when they become a little bit more stubborn. And just my children, I'm sure no one else's are like that. And then K4 is, typically that's a higher number of students. I do know that our second grade is extremely, extremely full. So, we're keeping an eye on that just to see if we need to add another staff member to second grade to make that work.
Second grade this year?
This current second grade. And part of that is, if you think about this is running concurrently with Jumpstart, and we pull kindergartners and first graders who are struggling with significant reading gaps. We pull those students out and put them in the more intensive Jumpstart program, which Mr. Fancher's spoken about several times here, and we're seeing huge gains in that. So that frees up some spaces in K1. We don't do that with second grade, which I think is why we're seeing partly this larger influx of the second grade need. Now, of course, that doesn't mean every family that's invited will indicate that they would like to attend. We certainly send invitations. We certainly do the phone calls, because those are kids that we would really like to make sure that we've helped support.
And for the May 9th, when it's open, will that be through the website? In other words, how will people know?
Yeah, so we'll send it out through our Tiger Talks. It'll come through the buildings. We'll put it out, the district one as well. And we'll make sure it's just parked on the website. All right.
What about, you may have said this, I apologize.
Fine.
Where would families find information about the ones that aren't for credit, like the U Science Career Exploration, the behind the scenes in sports?
So that was sent out from the high school, from the counseling department. So maybe go back. I would say if somebody's listening, you might want to go, maybe they didn't. And we'll send those out again, because it was all in one registration form. So when you went through the entire thing, it would be like, click here, and so I will certainly say, maybe we should send it out again, because I did see when that one actually was sent out. So that comes directly from the high school.
It's not on the website.
It's not on the website right now, because they're doing kind of the whole, like, who are the people that who are we getting first? Because it's linked into the same document with the other.
Anything else? Mr. Doherty?
I have 3.
Yes.
You may be able to answer them.
Okay.
If you're not, I'd appreciate it.
Okay.
One is, what's your expectation for the number of students involved?
So we go with 80. We do 80 total up through, at this time, up through grade 4, right? So that means you're running 2 sessions in the morning and 2 sessions in the afternoon. So that's kind of how we work that. We cap that at like 20, right? 20. We had 20 each section. We are saying capping at 80 for all of those. Right now, we did not reach that mark for 5 through 8. So we're watching the numbers to see how that comes in.
Okay. You've told me that, or you educated me on this once before, and I forget the answer. But I think it's sometimes useful when people are thinking about the value of summer school to put it in this perspective, which is given the amount of time that they spend on a particular subject, how much of a school year do we actually have a chance to present during summer school?
Right. So I think it's different depending on the grade level. So when we look at the high school perspective with those credit recovery, that's pretty intensive. So those are 4-hour blocks in the morning with some outside work that's expected that you could expect for an older student to do, right? And so you're taking a 2-week block, condensing your curriculum, making sure that the highlighted pieces are what you're going to cover. With our younger students, it's a little bit more about focusing in. If you recall, we focus just on reading and math for our K through 8. And then we do offer like specials options on a rotation basis of music and art, just to make sure that we're kind of still working all those things that were kind of at a loss during the shutdown. How much of a school year? I would say it's not like you're recouping the same thing, right? Because you're talking about 10 days worth of instruction at 2.5-hour like blocks where you're sharing that between the same. But it's really more about eliminating the loss. So you have a tremendous amount of gain that happens in the 9 months that students are in school. And part of the reason that we choose with our younger students to start that in July instead of doing it in June, like a lot of districts. And the reason we do that is because we have found that our impact and our gain for our students is greater when we back it up closer to the start of school. So what happens is you'll have this little lull, you'll have a little loss in the spring when the students leave, they go home for a month or so, and then you bring them back and you do kind of what we just call like a soft start or of a reboot. And then we bring them right back in August, because if you notice the last day of that, I believe August 2nd, and then school starts, they only have like another week off and then they're back in school. And then we strategically in some of our programs have, set it up so that we're relaunching pieces based upon what happened over the summer with particular students that had some more intensive needs. Yeah, so I like to say it's more of a lessening the learning loss that happens over the summer and almost kind of a reboot for some of our younger learners for sure.
Yeah, I'm just trying to, that's very helpful. I'm just trying to, help make the case for us and for everybody else of the value of this. You
Right.
think 2 weeks, well, what can you do in 2 weeks? The fact is that it's a very focused 2 weeks. And that's where I was trying to correlate it to,
Yes.
Small part of every day during the normal school year, but a big part of these days.
Absolutely.
So, all right, maybe there's another way to think about it, but thank you for that. And the last question, you may not have an answer for that, but especially on the heels of the earlier discussion about the projection, financial situation, et cetera. When we run out of Esser money, I hope I'm wrong about this, but I think there's real value in this. And what's it going to cost us to continue? Is it $100,000? Is it $500,000? I have no idea. But I'd like to have some idea what the cost of the summer program is to us.
I certainly think that's something I can give you after, like we can get that for you after when the summer program concludes. We have added what I think is really important to note, and John Ames was very helpful in this discussion I had several months ago, was some of those students that we're inviting to the credit recovery at the high school, We were really worried about the transportation piece because, we don't transport to high school during the school year. But because this is considered a specialized program, we are allowed to use Esser funds to transport those students. So we are working with Mr. Osi in the transportation office to make sure we're getting a bus out to some of the homes for some of our students who we feel like this would be really beneficial. So so that obviously we would just put that in the cost for what this summer could be like. So we could give you like X amount of dollars is spent in staffing, this much on food service, this much on busing. Yeah.
I'm real good.
Yeah.
Keeping it at a high level.
Perfect.
Order of magnitude.
Right. Mhm.
Rough
Right.
estimate. So when we're thinking about expenditures and revenues and all of that,
Mhm.
what kind of an impact is this on us were we to continue to do it past federal funding?
Right. Yeah, I think that's why I kind of put there as that bullet point of moving forward is going to be a really important thing for the district to consider next year is, knowing that that's running out. What pieces of the summer program, maybe we can't run it exactly like we did. Maybe it's not to the same scale. Or if we value that, if we find that that's impactful, then how is that funded, right? Because we have to be careful about making sure we're
So
meeting
these
that.
two issues kind of bookend each
Okay.
other.
Mhm.
What's the value of this? Trying to get clear on the
Yes.
impact that it's having, and then the cost of doing it. Because as I understood you to say, we're okay this summer and next summer, and then we don't have funding.
Yes, you are correct.
So it's that magic 24.
Kevin, this goes back to the same conversations, and remember this from last year. We had the presentation of this is how much we spent on it and this is how many kids came. And it'd be nice to see what our growth was this summer versus last summer and how the programs changed. Figured out a little bit how to do it. Because obviously it was completely de novo last year, where you all looked at each other and said, okay, how are we going to do this?
Yeah.
Amazingly pulled it off.
Right.
A relatively short period of time to do
Yeah.
it. But my concern it goes back to what Kevin's question is, and obviously what your concern is. If we'd like to continue this program, if we determine that it has value in helping these children, whether that's making up the COVID gap or it's valuable to alleviate the summer, fall have, how do we measure its success? I think that's really hard to do because you can have that feeling for how they did. We test kids all the time. Is there the ability to look at the children who went through the program? Did their test scores change in any way?
Right.
Compared to children like them that didn't go through the program?
Right.
I think that if we're being asked in the future to fund this, we'd like to see how does it affect the kids? And especially going back to the conversations that we've had that our most disadvantaged kids are the ones who have the biggest gaps. And it's a tremendous difference for those children if we can offer them an opportunity like that.
So, we do give, speaking of the assessments, we give the MAP test, right, pretty much when they come. And that is definitely something they can take a look at where that student left in the spring when they took the spring map and take a look at where that student is in the fall. And as you remember, our principals are pretty versed on that. And we could just do kind of a pull out slide almost and share with the board on here are the students, X number of students attended, here's how they're trending. This is what it looks like, right? And start going back and kind of keeping track of that. That's definitely something we can do with MAP.
Do you have any idea, just thinking across the state and across the country, knowing these, ESSER funds are obviously a broad category of funding. This is a specific thing we're talking about using those for, but wondering how many districts are using this to fund those kinds of programs. Just wondering, long-term, is there some advocacy that could be done? We can show some demonstrated results. We see that nationally, Department of Ed grants to fund this particular piece of what Esser has been doing because this is making a difference nationally and something worthy of.
Right. So, it's interesting that you mentioned that because I was work with the writing team today for the strategic vision. And one of the feedback pieces in there was about grants. And is there somebody like who does that? And, we don't have somebody that just manages grants. I mean, we all do different things. And I thought one really important, interesting feedback piece in there was about grants. And that is something to consider, like when you get to the point where this is running out and you find you want to keep what portion of this, what's it going to cost to do it? And are there grants out there to meet those needs? That actually been our strategic visioning feedback from the last design team. So,
Anything
Yeah.
else from Mrs. Connor? Thank you very much.
thank you.
I think I should have asked Mr. Broadwater if he had anything else, but we're moving right into dates, so he can segue in however he would like. Mr. Broadwater.
Thank you. I'm going to try and share my screen. I apologize. I had the file open and it's not showing up. I would like to say thank you to Mrs. Connor for everything she does. She does a lot of work, her and I know Susan Craig as well, putting all of that together. So I appreciate all of that. And I am not. Seeing my file.
It's not able to be shared from board docs.
If you have it on board docs, we could go ahead and do that. I had updated it, but I don't know why Zoom is not allowing me to pull up mine. I don't know if I need permission, Cullen, to pull something up. But if it's in board docs, Mr. Giuffre, would you be able to share board docs?
Sure. I think Cullen's got it, but I'm not logged into Zoom.
Oh, okay. But as we're working through that, what I thought I would discuss this evening, we had promised the board that as we went through the strategic visioning process, we would update at every board meeting. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to talk about the strategic vision. You had mentioned Esser funds, so we're going to mention Esser funds when it comes to some of our reading supports at the elementary, and give you an update on all-day kindergarten as we move forward with that. But the strategic vision, we had our second design team meeting, and that was on Thursday of last week. And with that, the SWOT analysis, I did share with the board on our board update yesterday. The SWOT analysis identified 4 main themes. Student success was one theme. Culture was the second theme. Finance and facilities is a third theme, where those two go hand in hand. And then community engagement is our fourth. So again, it's student success, culture, finance and facilities, and then community engagement is what we'll be taking a look at. If you remember the prior meeting, the participants on the design team went through and did a SWOT analysis, that's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And we came up, not we, but Battelle for Kids came up with those 4 main themes as we go through it. Under student success, Colin, any luck with getting it to come up? It's
Your microphone
Ah.
off again.
there we go.
Looks like they're,
There we are.
All right, so I am on the 4th slide. Thank you. So student success, this was the one of the main themes. We have the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. I hate to go through all of them, but I think it's important to notice sometimes you'll see strengths are also weaknesses, which are also opportunities. So under strengths, you see that our design team feels we have high standardized test scores. high graduation rate. Our instructional staff, they are very pleased with, and what our teachers as well as our other staff members do for our kids. Weaknesses, the student engagement, communication, course offerings, opportunities, and we've seen this over and over again with the career tech education, project-based personalized learning, and then relationship development. And then the threats, it's a theme tonight, I guess, finances, implementation of what we feel we are going to be doing with the strategic vision, and a lack of support. The next slide, which is the next one there, gets into, we have culture, the strengths, we have a lot of community pride, we have community support, and again, our school staff is a strength for the culture. Weaknesses, lack of diversity, lack of continuity between school buildings, building culture. Opportunities, and we've seen this quite a bit, is local business partnerships, diversity and inclusion, social emotional learning. And as we've gone through this process, kind of what Rob and I did with the finance presentation, being able to define exactly what it is that we're talking about, making sure that people understand when we're talking about mental health supports, different things like that. And then the threats, the design team under culture had the politics and misinformation, and then mental health, which we have heard over and over again. The next slide gets into the finance and facilities. Under finance, the strengths was the financial stewardship. We talked a little bit about that this evening, where the last levy was 2014. Increased transparency is something that we've been trying to do all year as we move forward. Under weaknesses, like I'd mentioned, you might see some of the same things: failed levies, lack of transparency, lack of alternative funding sources, opportunities, alternative funding sources, community engagement, and then threats was a lack of funding, community mistrust, and misinformation in communication. Under facilities, the strengths, building configuration, where we have grade bands at each of our buildings, and that is a strength in terms of managing it. Building maintenance, our maintenance department does a great job of maintaining our facilities. Weaknesses was building space, age of facilities, technology infrastructure. Opportunities, incremental upgrades, technology infrastructure, and community partnerships. And then you can see the threats there again: funding, age of the facilities, and finding land for new buildings. And then our last theme was community engagement, strengths, community pride, again, communication and community participation. Weaknesses, the community mistrust from past levies, lack of connections to local businesses, two-way communication. Opportunities, and you're starting to see some common themes here. We have local business partnerships, school community partnerships, threats, misinformation, lack of community support, and monetary concerns. So throughout those four, you can see a few things weaving through all of those. And the next slide, Colin, if you could hit that. Our next steps, Andrea had mentioned the writing teams. After Thursday's meeting, Battelle for Kids sent us pretty much the outcome of what was asked of the design team Thursday night, was to develop goals under those four themes. Once you have those goals, develop the success measures. And we always want, for me, I would like it to be very focused. We want it to be SMART goals. We want them to be specific. So we know exactly, how do we know that we're doing well and that we're achieving what we're trying to achieve. We want them to be measurable. We want to be able to, just like you want to evaluate the summer school program, we want to be able to evaluate how we're doing on our strategic vision. We want the goals to be attainable. We want to be able to say, yes, we did that. Yes, this is good for kids, and make sure it's attainable, yet it's stretching the boundaries of what we do. We want it to be relevant, which means we want it to align with our strategic vision. I've said this in many meetings. We have a teaching staff that I do not have to say, hey, let's do some things for kids. They come up with ideas, and you almost have to pull the reins in because they're so excited to do what they can do for our kids. But now, as we see new programs coming in, how does it align? How is it relevant to our strategic vision so that we can be good fiscal stewards of what we're doing? And lastly, we want it to be time-based. We want this strategic vision. If we say we're going to achieve this goal in a year, we want to achieve it in a year. We want to have it time-based. So the next steps today, the writing team met with Battelle for Kids for the first time. They're going to develop action steps based on the design team feedback Thursday evening. So they're going to develop those goals and then those success measures. May 16th, community session number 3. We have our Tigers Inc. kids coming in. If you remember, we had them come into a board meeting and introduce them. We have them doing a design thinking challenge for that community session number 3 on May 16th. And by then we should have, the writing team should have the goals and the success measures. So we'll allow the community to poke holes through a design thinking challenge and just let our kids tell us what it is that we need to do and listen to our community as we move forward. Once May 16th, we gather that information. May 18th is the last design team meeting, meeting number 3. The design team will incorporate the community input for May 16th and then review the work the writing team has done, because we want to make sure the feedback has been listened to. We want to make sure we represent what we're hearing in these meetings. After May 18th, the writing teams are going to adjust anything that needs to be adjusted according to the input. And then on June 6th, we will have the gallery walk, which means we'll have the strategic vision complete. And then we will move into a board meeting so that the board can look and determine if they're going to approve the strategic vision. So on June 6th, we will have that gallery walk, which we will set up the strategic vision. We'll allow the community to come in, walk through, and then following that, we'll have a board meeting to approve the strategic vision as we see it. So with that, I have a couple other slides, but I do want to ask any questions from the board in regards to our strategic vision process.
Any questions? Any questions? I'm not seeing, it was a pretty thorough report, Mr. Broadwater, so I'm not seeing the board asking for any further input.
Very good. Moving on to the next one, we had talked about Esser Funding. As we had walked through the buildings, and we try and get out to the buildings as much as possible, listen to our administrators, listen to our teachers, our staff members. What we are hearing is, and it's been mentioned earlier this evening, a COVID gap, and the concern is with the COVID gap, it's reading. We believe that if students are going to be successful, reading is the key, and reading at an early age. And so therefore, we have talked to the board prior and discussed this. We will have Esser funds available. And in my mind, this is the perfect use of Esser funds, which is to get our kids back to where they need to be due to the COVID gap with reading. So we are going to use Esser funds for 2.5 reading teachers and 2 aides. This will be at the Early Childhood Center, the primary and elementary schools. 1 current reading teacher increased to 1.0 and 0.5, and then 2 reading teacher positions. We are making sure this is only 1 year. It's going to be based on the Esser funding. We'll reevaluate at the end of next year. Like Andrea had said, we do have a second year, but we want to make sure that we're going to collect the data to determine if this is going to be working for our kids, if it did work for our kids, if it did close a gap. So our buildings and our building administrators know that they're going to collect the data to see exactly how well this works. And I did provide a link in there that Mr. Coles provided, the reading data that we used in order to determine that, yes, it would be helpful to have reading teachers and a couple instructional aides so that we can get our kids moving in a good direction with the reading at those 3 buildings. The last slide goes hand in hand a little bit, all-day kindergarten. The Board of Education in prior board meetings, we had discussed that we would like to provide all-day kindergarten for any families that would want that. And so I think that is a big step in the correct direction. To the Board of Education, we say thank you. I know Mr. Coles, who is at the Early Childhood Center, is instrumental in getting there as well, and Mr. Ames making sure we have classrooms to do that. But just a quick review where we're at right now. Full day, we have 202 students, and this is per last week, so it may have changed. Full day, we have 202 signed up. Half day, we have 67. We believe we will see an influx As you get into summer, you'll see families coming in to enroll. Currently, this year, we have 11 kindergarten teachers. We have 300 students. We have 7 full-day kindergarten teachers. We have 4 half-day kindergarten teachers. That means we have 8 sections of half-day. Next year, what we are anticipating, most likely, we will convert to where we have 10 full-day teachers and 2 half-day teachers. As the enrollment continues, the increased accessibility for full-day kindergarten would mean Loveland would need to add an additional kindergarten teacher. We would make that on a 1-year contract. I do want to remind the board that full-day kindergarten is tuition-based. We have noticed that the tuition covers about 70% of an FTE, approximately 70% of an FTE. So it's not a full add of an FTE, adding the one full day kindergarten. And if the numbers continue, who knows, it may be where we've got to have 2. But right now we would project that we need 1 full day kindergarten additional teacher. And again, the tuition would cover 70% of that cost. The nice thing is that with the additional reading intervention, we'll have additional time with those kids being in full day kindergarten. They'll have additional time to access that intervention for reading as well. So we're excited with the program, the full day kindergarten program. We think it's important for our kids to get off to a good start. And if you talk to our first grade teachers, they would tell you that they can notice a difference right out of the gate with those kids that are coming from all day kindergarten in regards to kind of the stamina of getting through an entire school day right out of the gate. So with that, ends my report, and I would take any questions that the board may have.
Any questions or comments? Again, really full report. So I'm seeing people shaking their heads. They're understanding.
All right, very good.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Broadwater.
Thank you.
The one resolution that we have under board resolutions is to approve the Loveland Middle School field trip for Loveland Middle School to Otterbein University for the Power of the Penn State Tournament. My belief is that that is for the Power of the Penn team, not for the Loveland Middle School. The whole middle school is not going to Otterbein University for the Power of the Penn State Tournament. It is the team that has achieved the honor of going there. So that's what you'll be moving. Yes. It's just the way I just realized the way it's stated in the motion that it's the Loveland Middle School. So it should probably say the Loveland Middle School team. So is there a motion?
So moved.
I heard Dr. Swetchnow first and Mrs. Washburn second, and that is to approve the field trip for that Power of the Penn team. Any questions or discussion? Mr. Giuffre?
Dr. Schwetzner,
Yes.
Ms. Washburn,
Yes.
Mr. Darty,
Yes.
Reverend Eilert, Dr. Lorenz.
Yes, motion carried. Then we move to the March 2022 financial reports. Before we have that motion, Mr. Giuffre, do you have any additional report or have you given us enough financial information?
I just wanted to mention, when I first came, we created a relationship with Meter Investments. We have $8.5 million there. We've got $1.6 million of commercial paper that's going to mature on Friday. And I'm going to sweep that out of that account and probably put it in STAR or something more, so we won't get charged for not having, but I don't think that we're at a point to be able to reinvest that and ladder it out because we have investments out to 2026. So we're pretty laddered.
All right.
That's all I got.
Thank you. Then I would need a motion to accept the financial reports for March 2022.
So moved.
Mr. Doherty moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Dr. Swetchnow seconded. Any questions or discussion? Those reports are on the on board docs, and as the recommended action notes, additional detailed financial information can be accessed on the district treasurer website. All right, Mr. Giuffre, can we
Mr.
vote?
Darty,
Yes.
Dr. Schwetzner,
Yes.
Reverend Eilert,
Yes.
Dr. Lorenz,
Yes.
Mrs. Washburn.
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion carried. At this point on our agenda, we have a recommended action for the board to enter into executive session pursuant to ORC Section 121.22G1 to consider the appointment, employment, dismissal, promotion, demotion, or compensation of a public employee or official. I will note before we have that motion and before we take any action on it, for our audience online, there will be, as you can see from the agenda, there will be action after this executive session. Typically, when we go into executive session, that is not the case, but in this case, we will, if we go into executive session, we will come out and then we will have the motions that are listed on board docs. So is there a motion to enter into executive session to consider appointment, employment, dismissal, promotion, demotion, or compensation of a public employee or official?
So moved.
Reverend Eilert moved, and I will second the motion to go into executive session. Mr. Giuffre, can we vote on that?
Yes.
Dr. Lorenz,
Yes.
Mr. Doherty,
Yes.
Dr. Swishner,
Yes.
Mrs. Washburn.
Yes. Motion carried. I have us going into executive session at 8:03.
Who would you have come?
So, Cullen, we're going to go into executive session, so the meeting stops or it pauses right now. We normally put up that flash screen, that tells the public, and then
Whatever you did worked.
All right. And are we recording and, okay, so we have come out of executive session at 8:59. It has taken a couple minutes to make sure our system is up and running, but we are back in regular session. And we are moving into the Director of Human Resources items. The first item is a motion to approve adjustment to transportation substitute pay rate for Pacific field trips. Before we do either of those, I'll ask Mr. Collier if he's got anything to say on either one of them before we move them.
Okay, on the first one with the transportation substitute, just to make sure that you guys are all clear, this is only for folks that are substitutes for us, and it's only for specific field trips. And let me give you an example. Field trips are paid at a different rate than typical routes. Substitutes are paid at a substitute rate. There are, quote, field trips that the field trip is not available for any of our regular employee drivers because of the time of the trip, meaning it's an right after school type of trip. Let's say the JV baseball team has to be at a certain field at a certain time. Our regular drivers aren't finished with their routes to be back in time to take that field trip. What this is doing is basically saying that the quote substitute really isn't substituting for anybody because nobody that is a current employee can take that field trip. So the substitute rate and the field trip rate, it's less than a $2 per hour difference. We're just making sure that this is clean and that it is understood that the folks that are doing that are quote substitutes, but they are not substituting for anybody, that they're paid at the quote field trip rate. That's what that is about.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody have any questions about that?
All right, can we have we'll have a motion and then you can have your question.
Sounds good.
Okay.
So moved.
A motion to approve the adjustment to transportation substitute pay rates. So Dr. Swetchnell moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Doherty seconded. Any other question? Now, do you have a question or discussion?
Just a quick question, just for my purposes. What's the difference in pay rates? Substitutes are generally paid less?
Yeah, substitutes are paid, like, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, it's like $1.75 less on the hour than the quote field trip rate is. And a field trip rate, even for one of our regular employee drivers, is paid at a different rate, not at the rate that they earn for their regular route.
And we've made it this complicated for a reason?
No, it's really just been brought to our attention that the quote substitute really isn't subbing for anybody because it's actually a field trip that nobody can actually take. So the folks that we have that are substitutes for us have brought it to our attention. Hey, we're really not subbing for anybody. We're just basically taking the field trip rate. And if you had employees that could take the rate, you'd be paying them the field trip rate. Can we just have the field trip rate? For the lack of confusing everybody with substitute rate and field trip rate, I'm hoping you understand.
No, I would encourage you to make it as easy as possible for you in the future.
Yeah, we were thinking about a couple of different ways to try to make this happen. We feel like what we're doing is going to basically make it to where it's actually fair. And we also value because none of this is really affecting our full-time drivers at all because they're not able to take that field trip. And the substitute drivers that we have, we really value them being substitutes and them pointing this out of, hey, for all the other field trips that regular drivers can select those field trips, but if they don't, or if they need to fill in for somebody, they would get the field trip rate. So it's making it way less complicated. And what it's going to do is when it is this field trip that a substitute is going to complete, then it is super easy. They're just going to indicate it on the time card so that payroll knows to pay them the correct amount. Everybody is happy and we're moving on.
But a field trip is a field trip is a field trip, period.
You got it.
Right, okay.
And it could actually be a COVID casualty because, we haven't had field trips for a little while. And we have had more bus drivers perhaps than we had to have before recently. So it could be a confluence of all that kind of thing.
Yeah, there's just been the amount of hours that all of our regular drivers, the amount of hours that they have, and the amount of folks that we have available to be able to take these trips. It's over the last couple of years, it has changed and been different. And we're just trying to make sure that we're keeping up and being fair.
To my point, I want to make sure that all of the drivers, both the permanent ones and the substitute ones, know that they're very valued by us.
Oh, if there is ever an opportunity for us to make sure that we let these folks know that we value what they do, that is an understatement, Dr. Schwetzenau. And yes, our drivers do a really awesome job, and we really value the work they do. And we want to make sure that we are keeping things neat and tidy and everybody functioning the way they should, because we desperately need them in their spots.
Give some thought to what could be done to express that appreciation.
Well, I mean, there are things that we do throughout the year. Mr. Ames and Mr. OC do a really nice job of making sure that these folks feel appreciated. But at the end of the day, I think what ends up happening earlier this year, I've come to you guys saying, hey, a substitute pay for all of our substitutes, no matter what classification we're talking about or what job we're talking about. It's just substitutes are very hard to come by, especially bus driver substitutes. And we're just going to continually have to keep looking at making sure that what we are paying substitute drivers and what we are paying our regular drivers is continuing to be competitive with the area. So just know that when someone like me comes to you, it is under the idea of we need to make sure that we are paying these folks what their job is worth, especially compared to in the area, to make sure to be competitive. Because what we can't have people do is say they're subbing for us and they're making much less pay here, and they can just simply go to fill in the blank, Indian Hill, Milford, Sycamore, and make more. They certainly will do that because everybody is needing these folks. So keeping our full-time drivers and really all of our classified staff, this is a time to say, hey, we really value you. And of course, the folks that are our regular employees, that is our OPSI organization, their union organization. So, and we're going to be in a negotiating year next year. So, pay is going to be something that's talked about then. But aside from that, substitute rates is something that you're going to continually hear from me and keep updating you on what's happening in area districts and what we might need to do to stay competitive.
Maybe in lieu of something more formal, you could find a way to let them know that we talked about them tonight. And
I will.
the way we talked about them.
It was a good conversation that we had.
Yeah. Maybe what I'll do is I'll send a note to Mr. OC and for Greg and Lori to be able to tell folks like, hey, just so you know, last night at the board meeting, there was some shout outs from our board members, making sure that you guys understand we really appreciate you. And believe it or not, something as simple as that can really go a long way to making somebody's day. So
Put it underneath the picture we took earlier.
oh, there you go. Perfect. I'm glad that you brought it up. Thanks, Dr. Schwetzenau.
All right. Anything else? Mr. Giuffre, can we vote on that?
Dr. Schwetzenau,
Yes.
Mr. Doherty,
Yes.
Reverend Eilert,
Yes.
Dr. Lorenz,
Yes.
and Mrs. Washburn.
Yes.
Motion carried. Before we have more discussion, I'm going to go ahead and make the motion to approve the resolutions of the Director of Human Resources, including resignations and employment, certified, classified, homebound substitute, and supplemental positions for the 2021, 2022, and 2022, 2023 school years. I'll make that motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Reverend Eilert, seconded. Now, Mr. Carlier, got a report on that? I think there were a couple
Yes.
of additions from.
Yes, there were a couple of late additions. You'll see those noted in, highlighted in yellow for you. And I believe that some of this information we provided in the date earlier this week. But a couple of things at the top for Section A that I want to make sure to call out. If I can call your attention to A1, that is Becky Clark, and she's an administrative assistant for the Pupil Services Department. That would be Jesse Cole's department. She's worked with us for a number of years, and she's putting in for her retirement, which of course is bittersweet. We're really happy for her and really sad for us. And I know that many of you know who she is. Just wanted to make sure to point that out. And then if you look at the late edition of number 10, at the very bottom there, that is our Assistant Superintendent of Teaching and Learning, and that is Andrea Connor. And you can see that resignation is there. And it would be an understatement to say that we are going to extremely miss her and everything that she does for us Not only as a friend, but also as a colleague and a worker. She is top notch.
When I saw her this evening, when I walked in, I said, no. No, that's all I have to say is just no.
Yeah.
I do have one question for her. I'm wondering if she's going to will her orange jacket to someone on her.
That's funny. By the way, it's a Kate Spade. It's a really nice purse. Yeah. No, but what I would, yeah, well, she told me earlier today.
Oh, okay,
We
okay,
joked
okay.
about it. What I would like to point out is that Mrs. Connor has an opportunity to go back to a school that she worked as a teacher and also as a resident. So it's a really awesome opportunity for her. We are very excited for her, but extremely upset that she's not going to be a part of our team anymore. So Andrea works tirelessly, and what she provides on a daily basis is extraordinary. And I probably getting ready to say a couple of words too, but really super excited for her to be able to go back to her home district and where she spent a lot of her career and to be a leader there. So they're very lucky. And I believe they already know how lucky they are. So that's why she was sought after. So congratulations, Andy.
Garth, could I jump in?
Sure.
I'll echo everything that you said, but my short experience with Andrea, I can tell you there's nobody that's more professional, knowledgeable in teaching and learning. And the word I would use to describe Andrea is classy. She's just a classy individual who just takes pride in everything she does. And I know that Andrea is missing working with kids. And so we are excited that she gets to do that in her home district, but it's going to be a big loss for us. But I wish her nothing but the best. And I know she's going to be an awesome high school principal for the Bulldogs in Batavia. So congratulations to Andrea.
I'd say congratulations too. And the last thing I'll say about it is over the past few years, Andrea has been a person that has really kept things together for us. She's not just been our teaching and learning person, but she's taken on a lot of other duties that had needed to be filled. And so I just wanted to know how much we appreciate her.
The keel.
Anything else on your report?
No, of course, if you guys have any questions, there are numerous other things. I know that you guys have had a chance to look at those, but I questions you might.
Okay, any other HR discussion? Hopefully we will get a chance in another month or so to recognize all the folks who are retiring and leaving.
Yes, that is being planned for our May board meeting. I just last week, Judy and I met about it and we finalized the plans today. So
Okay,
let the arguing begin on who's presenting whose plaque at the meeting. So
yes, all right, we'll work on that. All right, thank you.
Is
Anything
there
else?
scorecard that exists anywhere, like an updated one? Or-
yeah, if you I shared it with Mr. Doherty and Dr. Lorenz, but what I can do on Mike's next update on Monday, I can make sure to share that scorecard with you. What you'll see there is all of our current postings, which means it'll tell you whether we have posted or haven't posted for that position yet. The person who's in that role now, the position, if we've already selected someone for that role, lots of detailed information in there, and it would probably answer the questions that you might be thinking about. I'll share it with you. Yep.
Okay, thank you. All right, Mr. Giuffre, can we vote on that?
Dr. Lorenz,
Yes.
Reverend Eilert,
Yes.
Mr. Doherty,
Yes.
Dr. Swetchnow,
Yes.
Mrs. Washburn.
Yes.
Motion carried. We are now at the motion that we need, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Mrs. Washburn moves. There a second?
Second.
Reverend Eilert's, I was worried there wasn't going to be a second there for a minute. Mr. Giuffre, can we vote on that?
Mrs. Washburn,
Yes.
Reverend Eilert,
Yes.
Mr. Doherty,
Yes.
Dr. Lorenz,
Yes.
Dr. Swetchnow.
Yes.
Motion carried. I have us adjourned at 9:17.